Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley Lunar Goddess, Guerrilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average pun-making swearwolf that loves to explore the spookier things in life.
Hey everybody, I'm John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our magical pals? In today's episode, we'll be talking about brujeria. What exactly is brujeria? How does it differ from other types of metaphysical gifts? Join us and our special guest, India Phoenix, to find out more.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.
Sponsor stuff.
Sponsor, bring us back.
We're so weird. Welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said, we have a special guest with us tonight, India Phoenix. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here, guys.
I'm so very glad that I was able to get you on. I know we've been trying to get the schedules to match up, and life, right? Like I feel like it's been just like a chaotic past few months. So I'm really happy we were able to connect and make it happen. So tell me, India, how long have you been practicing brujeria?
Yeah. So I grew up in a very Christian household. I went to Catholic school. I did the whole church, Western church thing up until college. And then I sort of took a break. I don't have to get too into the details, but it wasn't a great relationship with the church. And so I broke away from that. And I spent some time, I think, just knowing that I liked the spiritual, I liked the community component of being in a church environment, but I just need something different. So I was kind of just floating around for a bit. And I would say within the last 3 to 5 years, about 5 years ago, I started dabbling in brujeria. I was very interested in Wicca and Wiccan practices when I was in high school. So I kind of started dusting off a little bit of that. And then 3 years ago now with the pandemic, I had time to research it and to learn more. So I would say I've been practicing now for the last three and a half years.
And there's a lot out there. Like you said, there's witchcraft, different types of witchcraft too. And we've got so many things out there. What drew you to brujeria specifically?
Yeah, so I kind of answer this in two ways. I think there's the human element and then there's the spiritual element. On a human element, I was curious about it. My family is from Puerto Rico. We have Taino ancestry. But if you know anything about Puerto Rico, it was the first place to be discovered by Columbus. That's the Taino natives. And then there was African slaves brought to the island to work, as well as all of the conquistadors from Spain. And so we have this very unique dynamic in Puerto Rico where we have the European, the African, and the indigenous all living in kind of a very beautiful homage, I guess. And so I always knew that I was interested in some of those ancient practices. And my grandma comes from that background, but she very much so was like, don't do that. So I think there was an innate piece of me that wanted to discover a little bit about that sort of ancestral piece. And then the human piece, I was like, this is so interesting. It's different. It is connected to my culture. At the same time that I picked up brujeria, I was getting really connected with my culture again. So I think there was just a couple of different things, but it felt the most natural. And once I started practicing, I realized how a lot of the practices of brujeria were things I had been doing my whole life without calling them brujeria. And some of that's because my grandma was raised with that background, so I think she kept some of it. But some of it is, I think, just because of spirituality and the ancestral pull. just coming out.
It was just the natural gifts coming out. So what does brujeria look like to you?
Yeah. So another little history lesson.
I love it. Let's do it.
I think it's important to understand the context. So
Absolutely.
when the conquistadores came to various Latin American countries, there's a big Catholic presence within Latin American communities today. And the reason for that is because Spain and Portugal were the two dominating the two dominating empires that came into the Caribbean and then also into parts of South America. And they were Catholic, and they were doing it under the guise of the Catholic Church. And so they started to implement these like Catholicism practices for the native indigenous communities. And what the indigenous communities did, the ones that were left, because they wiped quite a few of us out, is in order to assimilate and in order to kind of blend in, they kept their old practices, but they put it under the guise of the saints. So they would worship a goddess, but they would give her a different name so that on the outside, it looked as though they were practicing Catholicism. They were really leaning into those traditions while still maintaining a little bit of their own history. So when I think of brujeria, I think of it as a form of like rebellion and a form of I always use the language of reclamation. So I'm reclaiming these ancestral practices that were stolen from me because of colonization. And I'm leaning into that while also recognizing that we lost a lot of our practices. And so I'm creating new things, guided by spirit. You know, I put out calls. I spend a lot of time in meditation, but I'm also creating new practices. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge mix, kind of messy when you think about brujeria. But I like it that way because I think that that's what has allowed us to keep these practices for so long, is just adapting them as the time has gone on.
That's kind of how it has to be, though, right? Like it needs to be able to adapt to our lives as they are now, because our lives as they were during colonialism, they don't exist that way. So it really, like, our gifts and our spirituality and our practices really need to evolve with us. So I love your hodgepodge of what you created, because it's just taking that and making it yours, so that it's authentic to you. So that's really cool. So for what you, because I know, especially with the Puerto Rico base, that's also got other influences. You know, you've got like I imagine you've got some of like the voodoo and the hoodoo influence, because it's all the Caribbean mixture of people also there. So how does that influence does it influence your brujeria practice?
Yeah, it definitely does. So the Yoruba people from Africa would have been the biggest influence in the Caribbean. So not a ton of hoodoo. I don't necessarily see that, but they don't really have gods. They more have like spirits and deities that I wouldn't say control, but sort of are in charge of certain elements. So they're called the Orishas. These are from the Yoruba. So I do honor them. I don't do a ton of work with them. I tend to keep myself pretty in the Taino practices. So the deities that I work with are based out of Puerto Rico specifically. But yeah, I do. I'm very aware of the Orishas. I honor them and I keep them in mind, especially when I'm doing different types of spell work. I make sure I know whose domain I'm in so that I'm respecting and honoring them, because if I don't, it could get ugly.
I only know of things by like name. I don't necessarily know much about it, if that makes sense. So sure. How does brujeria differ from like santeria? Because I feel like some people interchange it, and those are not interchangeable.
Yeah, so brujeria is like a catch-all term, very similar to how witchcraft would be considered a catch-all term. Okay. And santeria, espiritismo, a couple of other branches sort of fall under that, the way you would have like Baptist and Catholics and Pentecostals and all of that sort of under the Christianity terminology. So my practice doesn't do a lot of Santeria. Santeria works a lot with like animal sacrifices. You have to go through a lot of training to be considered like a practitioner of Santeria. I don't have that same level of training, so I can't quite even speak to what their practices are because I don't fully understand them. But my form of brujeria is sort of a newer version. And if you talk to a lot of younger brujas, I would say even some Gen Xers and younger, we just didn't have the same upbringing because of a lot of the Western influences that limited our perspective on what witchcraft and the practice could really look like. And it made it something really dirty, which was done obviously very intentionally. But as a result, a lot of young brujas have had to learn on their own. And some of us have teachers, like I know a couple of my friends work with different maestras, and there are some schools, especially now, that are starting to create spaces for like curanderos and different workers to provide these practices. But for so long, we just didn't have that. So I think for like Santeria and Espiritismo, a lot of these people have had that in their culture for a really long time and have been able to keep it sacred. And part of doing that has been keeping others out. So they have successfully kept me out, and I'm okay with that. I'm finding my own way.
Now, finding your own way because you're not able to access certain aspects of it. Where do you find the resources, especially for like the traditional, because they had to hide from the Catholic Church and they had to hide from other, religions that were like, nope, that's demons. Where are you able to find information to help you kind of connect to those older practices to make it your own?
Yeah, I would say that that's another like twofold, where there's the human piece and then there's the spiritual piece. So on the spiritual side, I spend a lot of time in meditation. I do a lot of ancestral veneration. So that's one of my big practices, is working with the ancestors, talking with them. And I do find a lot of things are revealed to me in that space. And I'm able to kind of tap into older practices that way. But the other way is just to be in community, is to find people who are older than me that have been practicing for longer. I have a curandera out here in Colorado who works with us, and she has taught me a lot, especially about like the more scientific sides of things. So like, how do these herbs work together, and how can you cleanse your house, for example, like things that are really rooted in practice and have some like truth to it, right, in the way that the physical world works as well. So I learn. I spend a lot of time online. I read a lot, and I'm just sort of building it from all these different channels.
Yeah, it's funny, the stigma that's associated with those the words, even in like our own communities. I think about, and John knows about this, like with my grandma, she was basically a curandera. Like, she is all about the plants and how to use those to heal, and like some of the different prayer circles to be done if they think something's happening. But if you tell her that she's a curandera, she gets so mad at you. And like when I was little, I used to mess with her on purpose. And I'm like, Grandma, you're a bruja. And she's like, oh, don't you say that to me. And she would get so mad at me. And you think about that now, and it's like what she is doing, if that was put in context of outside of the Latin culture, she could be considered like a green witch or a kitchen witch. And if I said that to her, she would hit me.
No, that stigma is so real. And so when I launched my business, right, it's called By the Brujas. And I made it a very public thing. Like, I showed my logo, and my grandma follows me on social media. So she calls me one day and she's like, what's this with the brujas? Like, are you practicing brujeria? And I was like, oh gosh, like now I've got to like go into this story. And she didn't take it too well, but it's because of what they've been taught. So I think it's cool that there's a lot of people in this younger generation that are willing to go back to some of those practices and to see that they work like they work. It's real. Like, I know it's easy to think it's all metaphysical and it's all crazy, but it's real. I have a lot of like stories of how the magic has been very real for me.
Yeah, and I feel like magic and metaphysical, it's just science that hasn't been proven yet or hasn't, been researched in a scientific way that people will say, that's real. So I feel like it'll get there eventually. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I'm surprised nobody has told on me to my grandma all the stuff I talk about on these podcast episodes. I mean, I wouldn't stop, but it's just like, Grandma, I have a podcast, right? Yeah. Like what I talk about, right? Yeah, see. And it's like, okay, but I feel like she doesn't because
I was just saying, does she really though? Probably.
Yeah,
not.
because I feel like she'd be like, "What are you doing?" But she's come around to certain aspects because, like, I have my house filled with like rocks, different kind of rocks for healing and protection and stuff like that. And in the past, it was like people are like, "Oh my God, is she a witch? She's got witchy rocks." I'm like, "Is that a thing?" Like, nowadays there's gems and mineral displays and exhibits at the museum. And I'm like, look, it's a witchy display. Like, it just, but she's come around that too. She'll come and see like a new setup. She's like, oh, how nice, Mia. So we'll work her way, but I still can't call her a witch. She would hit me with the shoe really hard. But
Understood. I get it. It's a cultural thing.
I would pay to see that. I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh. You just wait. All I have to do is call her a witch, like a bruja, and she will throw a shoe at me.
Love it.
It's fine. It's part of the fun. My grandma and I have a fun relationship.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, she secretly loves that I piss her off. But so then for you, I know you said that you have a curandera you work with and you guys connect to people that carry the traditions. Is it hard to find those individuals? Like, was that hard because it's been such a stigma?
Yeah, it's so hard. And it's like, part of it is that the communities protect themselves, right? So they don't want the wrong people coming in, and that's understood. And I searched for a long time. It took me about 2.5 years before I found any kind of community like this. And when I found it, full transparency, I was hesitant. I was like, is this legit? Like, I don't know. Is it a scam? Just because we still have our own biases that we don't even recognize. So I spent quite some time like going to, the meetings and connecting with them and researching, doing a lot of like my own checking before to verify. But yeah, it's not easy to find. You have to know the words and, what you're looking for. And I think a lot of people, especially newer ones, just don't know what they're looking for either.
Now, you said that to create your practice, you connected to your ancestors to really bring that over. So for me, how did you learn how to connect with your ancestors? Or was it something you've just always been able to do?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I've always been able to connect with them and just didn't know that that's what was happening. And I actually listened to one of my resources was another podcast by two brujas from New York City. And it was great because I'm from New York City originally. So I felt like I was in community. I felt like I could trust them. They were young. They're younger witches. The show is Modern Bruja. And it's great because they talked about this. And I had never heard this talked about before, this idea of ancestor veneration. And they taught, how to build an altar and what should go on it and what should that look like. So I started there. I built my altar first, and I started just with recently deceased ancestors. So just like my grandfather, my grandmother. And at first, I will be completely honest, I was hesitant. I was like, I don't know, like they were Christian. Are they going to come and talk to me? Are they going to be mad at me? These are like the thoughts I had. And so I did a ritual and I connected with my grandfather and instantly knew it was him. I could smell him. I could feel him. And then I was able to, it was funny, the next day I was in the store and this incense, I buy incense all the time. My house is always burning something. And there was an incense I've never picked up in my life. I can't even remember what it was, sandalwood. I've never picked up that particular scent. So I go, okay, I'm going to get something in my soul. Just was like, please, you can get this one. So I grab it and I burn it and it smells just like my grandfather. And I was like, oh, that was the confirmation that I needed. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So yeah, I did that. And then after my first sort of like experience where I could tell this is real, I'm not just, a crazy person in my bedroom with some candles lit. So once I had that experience, I started to invite him more into my space. And my uncle, who had also passed away, his son, and we would just talk. And, then I started to explore, especially in meditation. When I do stuff with my grandfather and my uncle, it's very like ritual based. So I kind of got all my elements and different things, but I wanted to dig deeper and talk to some of the more ancient ancestors. And so I do that during meditation. And what I do is I just put a call out, a question, something that I'm trying to experience. And then I spend as much time as I can. I started with like 5 to 10 minute experiences. I've been meditating for a while now, so I can go for like 30 to 45 minutes.
That's impressive.
It's a practice. It's taken a long time. So yeah, I spend that time, and it's usually when I need to learn something, or I'm experiencing a rut. I want to, be more grateful. I want to do different things. I just ask. And I find that in that reflection time, they start to speak to me and give me answers.
Okay. That's I know that's been my, John will laugh, that's been my number one, like, how do I do this thing for the past, I don't even know, this past season is I keep getting told you need to connect to your ancestors. And I'm like, but I don't know how.
Exactly.
So,
That's exactly what I was thinking.
it's yeah. So that's why when you said, oh yeah, I connected to them to, really do that. I'm like, tell me how.
And if you put out a call, so I put out like an open call. When I say a call, it's another word for like a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just put out a call to the universe whenever I'm feeling these ruts. Like if I feel like someone's like, oh, you need to do X, Y, Z, and it feels real to me, I'll put out a call. And typically my experience has been that if I am genuine in that request, an answer will be given to me within a short period of time. It's not always the answer I want to hear, but I do feel like it becomes very obvious to me. And when I ignore it, like if I think that's not what it's not the answer I was looking for. It's not, oh, I'm just making this up in my head. I find that it'll continue, right? And so little droplets from the universe will show up until I finally accept it. I got to go and meditate.
It's like, you want the answer, I'm going to give it to you. You're going to face it.
Yes.
Right? Pay attention. I don't care if you like it. This is what it is.
Yes. I did want to go back. You were talking about rocks and like how you have a lot of rocks.
Yeah.
And I love that because sometimes I think rocks is like, I've talked to other brujas and they're like, oh, I don't really do like crystals. Like that's more like Western magic. But like I love crystals. I think they're so cool. I have one in my hand. I've been like playing with it this whole time. It's a selenite and it's to calm me down. So I'm like calming myself down. So I always get so nervous when I do these. But I love that because I think that's another example of how when you're a bruja, you can sort of pick and choose what makes the most sense to you. Like I have European heritage, whether I like it or not. And so I've got to lean a little bit into some of those practices too and sort of make it my own. So I'm a huge rock collector. I've got a ton in my house too. And another kind of thing that made me think of it is it's one of those innate things because I've got a 6-year-old daughter who has the coolest rock collection I've ever seen. And she'll tell you, she says, the rocks talk to me. And they tell me to pick them up. She's a bruja in the making.
I was going to say, that kind of sounds familiar, Ashley.
I know, she's a geosensitive baby. That's awesome. That's like, rocks are my world. I used to like be more quiet about it because shame, right? Like, oh, we're not supposed to. But like once I started just embracing and leaning into it, like, you know what? Yes, I feel pulls to certain rocks during different times. I visualize rocks for people if I feel a connection. Like, hey, I think you need this in your life right now, whether you want to take it or not. It's just I love it. And it definitely, I feel like, has an impact on my specific energy. So I definitely have learned to lean into that and embrace that more.
Yeah.
What I find interesting, though, people yes, Western society made it trendy. Like the New Age made it trendy, but it was always there. Like Native Americans love turquoise for a reason. And a lot of people are like, well, because, it must be because it's prettier, because it was valuable. But actually, turquoise is like a very powerful protection tool, and it wards off negative energy. And so to me, when they're wearing it, and it's like full on headgear, and like the what am I thinking of? Not the necklaces. What are they called? I'm spacing on the word, but just like all over these ceremonial dress. It's like there's a reason for that. They were drawn to turquoise for a reason, and not just because it was pretty. Those are, Native Americans are spiritual, and we're connected to spirituality in a way most of us just aren't, or are not yet. And so, yeah, I think that like some of our best like rocks, minerals actually comes from Latin America. Like some of the most special rocks out there, whether it's like the black flower agate or the Mexican crazy lace, or like there's just beautiful stones out there that carries just like protection and grounding and all these things. Like I'm already starting to nerd out. Like they're not going to take this away from you, India. It's just like,
I guess you can say that they rock your world.
ha ha ha.
Oh,
They
that's
do.
great.
And you've been holding on to selenite. I actually have been holding on to a carnelian tonight. So I don't know why. That's just what I'm like. I got to hold that one tonight. Yeah. So I get it. And I love that your daughter is into it. And like, yes, that just makes me happy.
Yeah. No, I'm raising my daughter to be a little bruja. She's definitely shown some sensitivities that I think I probably also showed at a young age and wasn't allowed to explore. So there's a lot of stories from when I was a kid of like my mom saying I did weird things or I said weird things. I had weird imaginary friends. And as I grew up, I'm like, I wonder, like I don't really remember it, but I wonder what that's like. And I started to notice a couple of those little things in my daughter. Like she's got a really powerful mouth on her. And what I mean by that is she can manifest without trying. So I tell everyone this story because my daughter, I really do believe, is a little bruja in the making. We had been living out in Nebraska for a little while. It was right before we moved to Colorado. And we came out to Colorado just for a visit. Like we had no intention of moving here or anything, at least for a couple more years. We knew we wanted to be here, but it wasn't anything set in stone. And we're driving my daughter around and she goes, Mom, I think we're going to live here. And I was like, maybe, like, I think that would be really cool. Like, not anytime soon. She's like, no, before the year is over, I think we're going to live here. She's 5, by the way, at this point in time. And so fast forward a couple of months and we're moving into our apartment in Colorado. And I was like, wow, like, that all started, and it really, she was the catalyst for it. She said it, and it started to get the gears going in our brains and pull in the numbers. And I realized really quickly, like, okay, she's got something on her because she was able to make that happen, and she's only 5. And she does it all the time. Like she'll do like little things. She'll say, something's, gonna fall or something like that, and it does. And then we're like, oh, that's scary.
But I love that she's got you as a mom, though, because you're going to help make sure that stays present. Because I feel like when we're little and we have these things that are starting to present themselves, different gifts or different talents, in the past, it's been like, oh, shut it down. It's evil, or it doesn't exist, or it's all in your head. And the fact that she's got you to lean into that and encourage that and support that, it's like, holy cow, what is she going to be like when she hits 14? What is she going to be like when she's in her 20s? Like, oh, I can't wait to see that. Like that. Yes, like that's exciting when we're not getting in our own way, right? When we're not stopping something. What kind of magic is that going to produce? And I'm excited for that.
Yeah, no, I am too. And I think, you were talking about like the indigenous communities and like their connection to rocks, right? And their connection to trees and animals. And all of that is because they were connected to nature in a way that unfortunately we are not anymore. And, you can get out in nature. Like, I love living in Colorado. I go to the Rocky Mountain National Park, and even there, it's like so commercial. Even being in nature in the mountains, it's beautiful, but there's cars everywhere, and, it kind of hinders it. But I try and get up into the canyon and do different things to feel that connection without getting conspiratory or anything like that. But, the cell phone towers and Wi-Fi and all these different things, they impede our connection with the natural, and they impede our ability to be in nature. And I think a lot of the feelings that you're talking about, like when my daughter and when you say like rocks communicate with me, I feel that way with food and with herbs. A Western word would call me like a kitchen witch. I do most of my magic in the kitchen, and I with wholeheartedness, I will hear an onion be like, I need you to chop me up, put me in the soup. Like, and it sounds silly, but I can feel that kind of connection. And I think that we would all have those connections if we weren't so distracted all the time, watching our TikToks and you got the music go, and I'm guilty too. Like, I'm not trying to be holier than thou. Like, I definitely fall into it, but that disconnection from nature, I think a lot of the magic is just science. And because we've put these barriers around ourselves, it's been difficult to make those connections.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there can always be a balance, right? So you don't have to get rid of it all to be one. Like, there's definitely, we still have to exist in modern society. So finding your 5 minutes for TikTok, but still finding your hour away from cell phone towers, away from everything, to just remember to sink your feet into the earth. And what did Lady Luna say? Hug a tree, John?
Yep, hug a tree. Definitely.
Go put your roots in the earth and hug a tree. Yep. So yeah, I think we just tend to not find the balance. Like, or like you said, we completely shut a door. So not acknowledging that connection to nature or earth the way we used to, or the way we were maybe intended to.
I feel bad for, the younger generation, because I was part of the last generation that was always outside before the internet and everything else, So we were told, go play outside, whether we wanted to be out there or not. We were out there. So we had to find something to do. So we'd walk around parks and, whatever else. So yeah.
Find some rocks.
The younger generation doesn't do that, right? Rocks, play in the creek, whatever. But yeah, stick around with some nature.
Yeah.
Now I have a sensitive question.
Yeah.
But wouldn't be a podcast, right, without some
bring it on. I got
controversial.
Dun dun dun.
I try not to be offensive, because in the spiritual world, spirituality is spirituality. But to me, we do have practices like brujeria, santeria, voodoo, hoodoo, like you name it, that are very much tied to specific cultures. Mm-hmm. With the new age of technology and modernity, that has been turned into a franchise, oftentimes, where it's like, pay us $4,999 and you too can be a Peruvian shaman, led by a completely like female Caucasian group. And and again, spirituality is spirituality. So if that's what you connect to, great. But I find myself wondering, is that what's happening? Or is it just trendy to be a shaman? And is tomorrow it's going to be trendy to be a bruja? And not towards you, but just like the new age. It does feel like it's being flooded in by like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I hear a Peruvian shaman retreat, but then every face I see leading it, I'm like, hold on, what? Where's the Peruvians?
Yeah, no, that's such a real thing. And I'm a Gemini, if you guys can't tell. And so I deal in duality. So once again, I have a two-pronged answer for you.
I don't mind it, because like you heard me, I'm like going back and forth because I'm like, it's a hard question.
Well, and it is. So I think two things. I think that what we are noticing right now with this sort of spirituality is trending. I think this happens a lot in times of uncertainty. So I think if we go back in history, even just in our lifetime, something very similar happened in like the early 2000s, and what happened during that period of time, right? Like 9/11, like different times where we feel unsafe or unsecure, we start to lean into things that can give us that. And a lot of people, I'm not speaking for everyone, but a lot of people I know, at least in my personal circle, in some capacity were involved with Christianity, and were in some capacity burned by it. And they knew they wanted that comfort, very similar to me, but not there because it wasn't there, right? So where else can I go? I think that was very natural. I think a lot of people experienced it. I also think we live in a capitalist society where everything is and can be monetized. So people sort of lean into what they know, even as they start to connect with these ancient practices. I don't think that all of the people who have commercialized their practice are bad people. I think that some of the people who are commercializing practices don't have the greatest intentions and maybe aren't the most genuine in what they say and are sort of riding the wave. But I think that, and this is just my own personal experience, but I've talked a lot about this with different practitioners in my circle of brujeria or other kinds of spirituality. And what we've all sort of collectively agreed upon is that there was some sort of awakening that happened within the last 3 years. So a little bit of astrology, not a ton because I'm not an astrologist, but we entered a new age. We entered the age of Aquarius, and in this age, is a big awakening. And that was something that was predicted. And it's so funny. And I think the universe is so cool in the ways that it drops seeds in our lives for major plot lines that are going to come up later in life. It's like a little foreshadowing in real time. And when I was a little girl, my uncle, who has since passed away, and he's one of the ancestors I work with quite a bit, he used to tell me about the age of Aquarius because it was a song, like in like the 70s. And he would always like, oh, it's the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And it was sort of this like joke, but that always stuck in my head. And then I believe it was in 2020 that we made that transition into the age of Aquarius. And then of course our entire world went to shit. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse on this show.
No, you can
totally curse. Go for it. Yeah.
So things got bad really quickly. And I think that upheaval is what set a lot of people onto this new path. That recognition that we're bigger, or it's bigger than just us. I think a lot of us were siloed, and the pandemic for many people opened up their eyes to where they fit in the bigger community. And a lot of people started to seek that out. And I believe in spirituality. So obviously I think there was a spiritual pull, whether it be from the ancestors or from people on the other side. I don't claim to know that stuff. I can only say what I've experienced, but I think they took advantage. They saw this thing happening and they were like, this is our chance. Let's get as many people as we can. I think it worked.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I felt that we've all, anybody that's even slightly sensitive has felt like a shift. And even those that refuse to acknowledge this world, they're like, something's off, something's changed. You see that, like, that's the one benefit of social media is seeing people's posts. They don't even realize they're all posting about the same awkward feeling or the same bad night of sleep or the same night of nightmares. And it's like, I guess I just really pay attention to people's feeds because I'm like, that's like the fourth person today that said they had a really rough night. And I don't believe in coincidences. So it's like, I do think there has been a shift to spirituality. There has been a shift to wanting to connect to something outside of us that we know inside exists. Whatever we want to call it, it's there. That connection to our ancestors, that connection to our life beyond us and behind us and ahead of us and around us. And for me, I'm with you. I think that no matter what your original origin of, culture, what you attached to, what you feel connected to, that's just what's going to speak to you. And I fully appreciate that. I actually have no problem with people that want to sell packages on like their gifts, because to me, back in the day, that was a thing. You traded food, you traded other, resources to these people that are providing you something, because that's what their life is revolving around. It's just, it has to happen. We have to take care of them the way they take care of us. Makes sense. I think the things, it really does come down to intention. Like you said, what's their intention? And there are some people you can just tell. Like, you just went to go take advantage of something that's people need, they're needing, and someone else is able to offer. And it's like, ooh, I can connect y'all. I can hook y'all up. I'm going to set you up for this. And it's just like, and I feel like you could tell, because you might talk to someone and get a reading and they're like, cool. Now do you want to do a $5,000 mentorship? And it's like, huh? Let me come to you about that.
Well, that's the thing. You need to have discernment. And this discernment is something I learned in the church, like in my Christian years. And my grandma would always tell me, same grandma I've been talking about this whole time. She's very involved in the church. And she would always tell me, you have to have discernment. Even when I would enter into like Christian circles, she would tell me, make sure you have discernment. Make sure that those people are there for all the right reasons, and that you're in a safe space. And I think that that's really important. And I even shared that when I looked at my curandera, I researched. I didn't just accept it because she, said she could do these things and she hit all the buzzwords. I'm a marketer. I know the buzzwords. I know how to find out what they're saying. But the truth is you have to feel it. And if you feel like it's icky, because the spirit will show up real quick if you're in a space that's not right for you and you're open to receiving that it might not be right to you, you'll start to feel it. You'll start to feel uneasy in your body. Your body will tell you long before your brain even catches up. And I think that piece is really important. There's a reason we say listen to your gut. Your gut and your brain are so connected. So making that decision based on how you feel is really important. And it's also important to do your research and to do all of these things. Nothing is that black and white, right? So we need to do all of these things. We live in a modern society. Like, lean on the tools that have been given to you in this age.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you, like 1,000%. Like, if you listen to your intuition, it's always talking to you. But we mute it down so much by ignoring it that it becomes like a little bitty whisper. But the more you listen to it, the louder it's going to get. Like your best friend, like, sometimes your best friend doesn't tell you what you want to hear, but it'll tell you what you need to hear. Mm-hmm. And that's I'm all about that. I love that concept, discernment. Absolutely do your due diligence and listen to your intuition. That's key. And I think too, people, when they listen, like when they feel their intuition, it's really important to be able to acknowledge that, like, just because something isn't right for you doesn't mean it's bad. Because I think some people equate like, ooh, I feel that this isn't for me. They're evil. They're bad. They're the devil. And it's like, not necessarily. It's just not right for you. Mm-hmm. And that's, I'm all about personal truth. I know some people I piss off that are of the like traditional religion persuasion when I'm like, yeah, that's your truth. And they're like, there's not your truth, my truth. There's the truth. And I'm like, okay, and that's your truth.
No, and it's cool. I like the you guys heard the story of the blind men with the elephant. It's like one of my favorite analogies. If there's a giant elephant in the room and they bring in all these different blind men to feel different parts of the elephant, and one might be, and they ask him, what kind of animal is this, right? And so one will touch the trunk, and obviously it's long and it's slender and it moves like this. It must be a snake, right? And then so on and so forth. They all start to touch different parts of the animal, and they all come to their different conclusions. And I think spirituality is very much so like that there isn't just one truth. It's a truth that is significantly bigger than our very limited human perspectives. And so it's not untrue that you're describing only the trunk of the elephant when you're describing it. That's a very real part of what you're experiencing. But to deny that others in the room are experiencing something different because it's not your experience really, I think is really damaging, because I can't imagine that. I don't know if, God is the name, whatever you want to call the creator, bigger entity. The idea that they could be so limited and put into a box and could only have these set characteristics that one group of people believes, just seems so human. And that entity is not. So why would they operate under our confines? It's my little religious spirituality soapbox.
Now, I actually love that story of the blind man with the elephant. That's a great way to describe it and explain like perception. And we can only interpret things the way we perceive the world. So it's like we put our very human characteristics onto something bigger than us. And it's like, it's not human. Like, we all agree whatever that is not human. So why would it embody our humanity in that way? Maybe there are facets of it because, we're all branches, but it's not completely wholly human. So I don't know. I get excited when talking about these topics. So for brujeria and does that include spell work for what your brujeria is? I like the smile. Big smile. Sure does.
It sure does. When I was in the church, I keep bringing Christianity, not to down talk it, just as a caveat, because it was my experience.
Right.
So when I was in the church, I was a prayer warrior. That was sort of always considered my gift. And I led prayer teams. I love prayer. I think there's something really beautiful about speaking what you want out loud, and letting everyone in the room and in the ether hear and receive that, and the intentionality behind it. So spells work identically. They work the exact same way. It's all about the intentionality behind it. So I do a lot of spell work, both big and small. So some of my spells are really tiny spells, blessed be, a breath of gratitude, a sort of I need XYZ, like bring it to me kind of thing, whatever that looks like. I love to rhyme my spells because I think that it's all about intentionality. So if you're really thinking about how can I make these words fit into this cadence that sounds good, then you're being really thoughtful about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And then I do some big spells with, I work a lot with the moon. So Tuesday, March 7th is a full moon. I will be doing I lied, not a manifestation. Don't manifest with the full moon. It's very dangerous. But just so anyone knows, it's not good to manifest with the full moon. But I'll be doing some releasing spells. And so it's a form of manifestation where you release whatever's holding you back from achieving your goal, whether that be like a physical thing or mindset, habits. For me, it's some pretty bad habits that I've been trying to shake. So I'm going to turn to some spell work for it because they're not going anywhere with all my human practices. So I'll give you guys an update on how that goes.
Nothing wrong with layering all the efforts.
Right. Again, we operate in this plane, so we got to bring them all in. But yeah, spell work for me is a lot about intentionality. You can use another bruja's spell if you have the permissions for them. I don't recommend going online and researching a spell for XYZ and then using it. I'm a firm believer you should be writing all your own spells, but I do share spells with different friends. My sister just asked me the other day, what do you do for a full moon? So I gave her my entire ritual, told her how I charge my moon water. And so she will be using that. She has my permission. And so I've given her my blessing in doing that. But I always recommend writing your own. And again, it's that intentionality. So, this is like a kind of funny quirk, but I think it's cute. There's a movie, millennials will know it, Halloween Town. And there is a scene in Halloween Town that I kid you not describes magic. It's all this one scene. The witch Marnie is asking her grandma, how do you make it go? How do you make magic work? And her grandma's like, magic's super simple. You just have to want something and then let yourself have it. And it's that simple. If you want it and you let yourself, the letting yourself is really hard because we don't ever let ourselves have what we want. We've created a lot of limits. But if you let yourself have it and you believe that you can have the thing that you want, that's magic. I mean, that's really how it works. So yeah, I love spells. I do a lot. If you can't.
And I love Halloween Town. So yay, you became my new best friend.
A classic, a millennial classic.
Love Halloween Town. I love horror movies and I love like you name it. Halloween Town, Hocus Pocus, I even like Twitches.
Disney horror. Twitches was good.
Twitches is good.
I like Twitches.
How could you not like the twins? Come on.
I loved it. I love all those movies. And I love that concept. I've been wanting to do like the full moon celebration with a group of friends and just have them come and do like releasing, like maybe have a fire pit and do like a release of all of our things that we want to let go of. I think I'm going to do my first like big one in Colorado.
There you go.
Invite me. That sounds fun.
Absolutely will.
I have no idea what I'm doing. A bunch of naked people running around.
You know what's hilarious is for me, like we're fully clothed, but one of my really good friends there, she is just like, she's adamant at some point. She's like, we need to do full moon bathing. And I'm like, what? She's like, we need to do full moon bathing. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. She's like, yes, you do.
Naked bathing in the moonlight.
Naked lay in the moonlight. I'm like, shoot, I'll do full moon bathing dancing. Let's go for it.
Let's do it.
Poor neighbors.
Hey, the moon's got powers. The moon's got some energy.
I'll have to poke your brain, India, about how to make moon water. Because you said, be careful what I look at online. So I don't want to go find it online. Usually I'm like, let's ask the Google. But instead I'm going to be like, let's ask the India.
It's a picture of a butt and some water. Moon water.
Moon water. So that'd be awesome. So you did mention your website. Are you open if people are wanting to look more into brujeria? Are you open to being a person to come to ask questions about or maybe get guidance or referral to?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are interested in learning more, you're curious, you just want to know, talk to a bruja, I don't know, ask me a lot of questions, feel free. You can just drop me a line. You can email me at indiaphoenix@bythebrujas.com or contact me through my website. It just sends an email to me anyway. So either works.
For the brujeria, is that more of a personal practice or do you also offer services to people that may need help?
We're working on it. We offer, right now, my firm is primarily marketing, but we do have a magical component in that we bring a lot of holistic practices into it. And we are working on actually developing a curriculum for people to just learn the basics, because we find that a lot of people just don't even know, like you were just asking, like, how do I make moon water? How do I do XYZ? Like, these are questions that we didn't know the answers to when we first started our practice, and we've had to learn along the way. So that's in the works. It's not ready yet. Hopefully by this summer.
Ooh, fingers crossed for you. Make sure, if I can make a request, make sure we put the history, because I love that you know the history. And I think that for anyone wanting to enter into things that have a strong cultural tie to it, absolutely take the time to learn about the history behind it, because the history oftentimes is what drives the emergence of exactly what is happening. Exactly like you said, how brujeria even came about as a response to the domination of the Catholic Church. And so definitely I think it's so important to know where things how they're born. I think that definitely drives, not the whole thing, but it's paying respect to your ancestors, basically. So,
Oh, yeah.
because we all share the same ancestors at some point. So,
Absolutely. No, we are all connected and we're all each other. And so it's important. I absolutely believe that.
and I love that every answer is a twofold answer. Like, because for me, I feel like every question I ask is like a twofold question.
I can't help the duality in me. It really is that Gemini.
Nor should you. Nor should you help the duality, because nothing is ever that simple, right? Especially when we're talking about spirituality and individual practices. Do you find with brujeria, people are more receptive in your community to it now that there is that awakening going on?
I think that's generational. So older people still have a lot of the same stigma. By older, I mean like people like 45 plus. Obviously not all, but that's just been like my kind of general experience. Younger people think it's cool. I think they're feeling those same like calls, and maybe just haven't been as open to them. So if I can just sort of show them that it's normal and I'm not like some weirdo living in like a dungeon practicing in the woods, like just a regular person. I try really hard to do that, to normalize it, because I think we a lot of people in my community at least still have a lot of that stigma. So I spend a lot of time explaining myself, and that's okay. I'm happy to do that.
It's very brave. It's very brave to put yourself out there and be the face of that when there is such a strong stigma. And that's where I tell people, look here, I'm not that crazy. I only dance naked in the woods on a full moon. So when I'm collecting the moon water.
I mean, everyone's got to dance naked in the moonlight at some point in their lives.
I was going to say at least once or twice.
I've had a really good time with you being on tonight. Is there anything else you want to share? Like, this is your time, your platform. Is there anything you'd like to share or say?
I think kind of like my last piece is for anyone who is like interested in this or like feels a call and has been maybe pushing it down, like to answer it. And it's so worthy. Like, I feel like even when I was a teenager, right, I was explaining like that Wicca piece, I was trying to explore it. And I was into the horror stuff and the different things. And over time, people kind of bred it out of me. They told me I was weird. They told me I was all these different things, which are not true. You're not weird, obviously. You're awesome. You're in great company. But if you are feeling those pulls, to feel comfortable to explore them, and reaching out to people and find the right people. There are lots of people who can teach you and want to teach you, want to bring you in, want to welcome you into this community, but you have to reach out. We don't know who you are. We don't know how to find you. So you have to let us know and we will welcome you.
I love that. Always use discernment,
Yes.
but you're not alone and you have a community awaiting you. I love it.
Right? Oh, it was so synthesized. You put that into such great words.
She's good at that.
No, well, thank you. I love the message that you bring to the table. You know, a lot of the reason why we talk about these topics is because, one, personally, I just want to know more. I feel that call and that connection, right? But also, two, we got to take away the stigma. And the only way to get rid of those stigmas is to talk about it and to put real faces to it. We're not, sitting in a room doing something awful. Like, it just like to make spells can take your agency away. And like, it just, whatever people have in their vision came from probably movies. And it's just, that's not what a lot of these topics are that we're talking about. So I appreciate you being willing to come on and be vulnerable about your practice and what you've experienced and how you put it together. Don't be surprised if I don't continue to blow up your messages like, India, but what about this? And hopefully you'll want to come back on so we could talk to you more about this stuff.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, I got some stories for you guys if you ever welcome me back.
Oh, well, we would love to have you back on. Absolutely.
Consider it done. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, exactly. You tell me when, and we will put you
We'll
back
make it
on.
happen.
Yeah, because I would
Exactly.
absolutely love to have you come on.
You guys are making me blush. Thank you guys again for just letting me talk and share brujeria with you all.
Yeah, I'm appreciative that you came on to talk about it with us. Truly, that's just, it's so happy.
Right.
Happy for me.
And I think like with all of these episodes, it'll find the right people that need to hear it, and we'll probably hear back from them. So we've actually heard back from some people on some episodes that, oh wow, that really, hit me, or I didn't know about that. And so I think it'll find the right people. It always does.
It always does. Yeah.
The universe provides. So
Exactly. That's it. You just captured it.
The key is just putting it out. Like I think you said really well earlier. You have to just put it out there and let yourself have it. And so anybody listening, if there are any of these episodes where you're like, I'm really curious, I want to reach out to this person, let yourself have it and let yourself have that moment and reach out. So, yeah. All right, John Thomas.
Woohoo! Bringing us home.
Bring us home.
Oh, yeah, I'm not actually muted. I thought I was.
He mutes himself all the time and forgets.
All the time, and I forget. I have a whole paragraph done, and they're like, you're muted. I'm like, shoot.
Gotta say it all over.
God dang it. I couldn't get it out the first time. No. But seriously, though, thank you, India, for coming on. I can't wait to have you back on to hear your stories. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I want to know these stories.
We're all about the stories. We love them.
We love stories.
Yes. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss another amazing moment.
Until next time.